The top business stories live from the Sky Newsroom. Surprise growth in the UK economy driven by services and construction. We'll hear from the building sector on how they're faring. UK property listings bounce back to the highest level since the pandemic as mortgage rates fall. Plus, an uncomfortable conversation. We'll hear how an increasing number of parents are leaving more in the will for one child than another. Very good afternoon and welcome to Business Live on this Thursday with me, Darren McCaffrey. The UK economy grew fractionally in the final 3 months of 2024, with better than expected growth recorded in December, in a modest boost for the Chancellor. Official figures from the Office for National Statistics showed that gross domestic product edged up 0.1% in the fourth quarter, driven largely by services and manufacturing. Many economists had been expecting a contraction for the period, with zero growth reported in the previous quarter. Here is Ed Conway with the latest.
The world economy is more unpredictable and volatile than ever. Ask this firm, Goodfellow. They deal in metals and materials, meaning that with the White House planning tariffs here, there and everywhere, they might soon find themselves smack bang in the middle of a trade war.
It's bound to have an impact on our business. Certainly it makes us look at our supply chain. We will look at where we produce our products and on our materials. We have an operation in the United States. And we may look to produce more there.
Gross domestic product, the broadest measure of our economic performance, isn't typically as hard to forecast as Donald Trump. But predictions that the UK might slide into recession at the end of last year have turned out to be wide of the mark. Now, a formal recession happens when the economy, these bars here, contracts 2 successive quarters. And that's what happened in 2023, down. That was when Jeremy Hunt was Chancellor. And a lot of economists thought maybe this bar was going to go into negative territory. Maybe that would be revised down. In that case, there would have been a recession, but of course, it wasn't. That went up. But when you divide these bars, the GDP, by head of the population, have a look at what happens. They go down. GDP per capita, which is kind of a better measure of how we all feel, is shrinking. Indeed, ignore the government, and even on a headline basis, the private sector is in recession. Add it all up, and it's hardly much cause for celebration, as the Chancellor herself acknowledges.
It's not possible to turn around more than a decades of poor economic performance in just a few months. But we are doing what is necessary to bring stability back to the economy, reforming the economy, the planning system, regulation and pensions, to encourage investment in our economy.
Here on the High Street, the mood is still pretty bleak. In towns across the country, shop closures outnumber new openings. This model shop in High Wycombe is one of the latest casualties. Are they new?
Yeah, these are all new.
After a year of slow trading, culminating in a dismal Christmas, Darryl and his wife Carol have taken the decision to close next month. And it's not just the economy they blame.
National insurance contributions going up for businesses from April, and minimum wage going up in April, and business rates will be going up. Being hit in the 1 month of April with all these increases made our business not viable.
Really? Just it was impossible, was it?
It's just going to be impossible, yeah. It's just, there's all the costs going up and trade is going down.
Now, according to the Bank of England's economic model, we shouldn't expect much of a bounce back anytime soon. Then again, they were forecasting a recession from these figures. But hoping economists keep getting it wrong is hardly a route to prosperity. Ed Conway, Sky News.
Well, let's get the view now of builders. I'd like to say we're joined by Rico Vitulovic, who is the Head of Policy and Market Insight at the National Federation of Builders. Very good afternoon to you. Construction did do quite well in the fourth quarter, but overall it's been pretty tough, hasn't it?
It has been, and on that construction side, there was a fall in repair and maintenance, and while new work broadly grew, the number of orders are down. I would say that the government's efforts on planning, which is focused particularly on the very large builders, have probably worked quite well. And I say that because it's the private housing market that's improving. And we saw that, unfortunately, in the last government, the biggest builders were perhaps pulling back a little bit, tempering their delivery, and a few anti-development policies and kind of barriers were put in their place. Labour, to their credit, have lifted some of them. What I would say is that's just simply putting us closer to the position we were in previously, and we haven't actually started to look at kind of the small and medium-sized sector, so builders delivering up to 250 homes a year, and that's probably where the best marginal gains are and strategic outcomes are. So yes, good work on the biggest builders, getting them back to where they were previously or close to that. But actually, there's a lot of work to be done if you really want to carry this on.
In saying that, I mean, I've been talking to lots of building firms and they say things are still pretty tough in terms of lots of them are distressed, many of them struggling to keep going month by month.
I obviously represent a lot of small and medium-sized builders, particularly regional contractors and developers and builders. It's really hard out there, and people are leaving the sector purely because the planning system is just too brutal. We've had so many different regulatory changes, 13 new taxes and regulations in the last 5 years. None have been softened by this government. In fact, they may have added extra pressures the way they've kind of looked at them or not looked at them. And so we are losing a lot of capacity. And that's important because we previously brought up the issue about immigration and why we need it. Our solution was that you need to enable more SMEs to win work, or at least be in the pipeline of work. And that's because they train 73% of apprentices and they make up 90% of the training capacity. So once you start to lose them, you really do lose your ability to be less reliant on immigration. And because it takes 2-3 years to train somebody to be qualified and then two years to become competent, you need to think ahead. And we're not quite at that stage yet.
You touched upon it there, didn't you, a little earlier about house building. We've just seen pictures of the Prime Minister today, who's still got this aspiration of building 1.5 million homes by the end of this Parliament. You know the sector. At the end of the day, you can talk about building homes, but you physically need to do it. Do you think there's the capacity in this country, as we sit here right now, to deliver that target?
Not with ensuring that quality is remaining high. I don't think there is, and that's why we need to. That's why I mentioned the SME element and the people they train, because they're where you're going to get the sustainable capacity from. That's where you create pipelines of careers. Because if you think about it, if you're just subcontracting 1 or 2 jobs to somebody and perhaps they fall out, they don't have a job for 6 months, there's no work, then that's difficult. But because SMEs typically retain their workforce or use the same supply chain, they will always have a career. When we built, SMEs built 9% of homes today. When they built 38% of homes, we trained more bricklayers and carpenters than we do entire construction apprentices today. So the capacity is a long-term thinking strategy. And people say you can solve it with modern methods of construction, build stuff off-site. Well, actually, that's very difficult to do. But secondly, the government is tied to climate change targets. And if you want to retrofit our buildings, which is the best way to deliver outcomes, well, you need a lot of a workforce to do that and to deliver all the capital projects. And they typically come from the house building sector, and then they filter out and they move to other industries and they have transferable skills. So again, it all is predicated on how well the SME house building sector is doing. Because remember, they don't just build homes, they deliver all the civil works, the contracting works, the construction works on those sites. It's not just housing, it's a skilled workforce that does modern and traditional skill.
OK, really appreciate your time. Rico Vilatulovic, thank you very much from the Federation of Builders there. Let's move on to housing, because UK estate agents are reporting the biggest increase in property coming to the market since the pandemic, as falling interest rates help to boost sales. New figures from the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors show that the number of new sales instructions in January was at its highest level since September 2020. It comes as an increasing number of lenders start offering mortgage rates below 4%. Let's speak to Andrew Krukock. He is Chief Operating Officer at the estate agency Knight Frank. Very good afternoon to you, Andrew. What is leading to this? Clearly, it's quite positive news, isn't it?
It is positive news. I mean, we've just experienced one of our busiest Januaries in our country business. We were the busiest number of market appraisals we've done for 5 years, and in London we had the highest volume of requests for 10 years. So there is clearly a lot of appetite out there from sellers wanting to come onto the market. The big challenge at the moment in the property industry is the gap between supply and demand. Demand has been suppressed for some time. There's obviously been a huge amount of things going on since COVID, high interest rates, global unrest, UK elections, budgets, you name it, it's been going on. And that has meant that some of the sentiment out there from buyers has been missing. What we're starting to see now is that sentiment is changing. So we're seeing more properties come to the market, and equally we're now seeing more and more buyers who are wanting to move.
How much has this been driven, though? We talked about lower mortgage rates there, didn't we? What about stamp duty? Is this not a sugar rush before changes to stamp duty in just over a month?
Potentially, that we've certainly been dealing with that for the last few months. We've been absolutely priming people to say you need to get on with it if you want to take advantage of this, the stamp duty saving. It can be up to 6,000 for first-time buyers. We've seen a very big push from first-time buyers wanting to get properties secured pre-Christmas and now getting them to exchange before that deadline. The challenge that we have again there is that the conveyancing process of buying and selling property in this country means that it takes a long time. So really, we're coming right up to the cusp now. If someone's only agreeing something now, it's going to be really challenging to get it across the line in time. So yes, that has contributed to how busy it is, but interest rates coming down now, it's hopefully going to boost that as well. I was with Simon Gammon from Knight Frank Finance earlier today. We've got the first rates now that are coming in at 5-year fixed, sub 4%. That again starts to really feed into the sentiment of buyers and a bit more positivity out there for everyone.
Yeah, indeed, and of course with the expectation that the Bank of England could cut interest rates even further this year. I'm looking at, on our Sky News Money blog, the cheapest cities for a single person to buy a home. Aberdeen, Liverpool, Glasgow, Sheffield and Newcastle are all in the top 5. My question, though, for you is this a uniform picture in terms of the strong sales and expectations of sales? Is it across the country, or is this in certain bits?
I think it's certainly not everywhere. I can certainly say that, and it's not at every single price point. We here sell over 2,500 properties a year, ranging from things at 400, 500,000 up to 100 million. Not all sectors of the market are working at the moment. It seems very much needs-based. So those people that are moving for jobs, they're moving for schools. Those are absolutely the markets that are performing. In particular, we're seeing South West London out into the home counties perform particularly well because people are equity rich there and they're happy to move. But it's certainly not a picture that we're seeing across the whole country.
Andrew, can you please set aside that £100 million house? I'll have a look at it later. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Andrew there from Knight Frank. Thank you. OK, let's have a look at how the markets are doing on this Thursday afternoon. Let's speak to Danny Houston, who's head of financial analyst at AJ Bell. Danny, very good afternoon to you. Can we start talking about BP if we can? Because there is a significant investor who's starting to buy quite a lot of shares.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Elliott Management, the activist investor that's been involved in all sorts of shenanigans at companies like Starbucks. Remember last summer when the boss there left and was replaced by Brian Nichol, who's making sweeping changes? Well, Elliott Management has been buying up a significant stake in BP. We learnt today it was around 5%, so that's £3.8 billion, which puts it at the third biggest shareholder of BP shares. And that, of course, means that BP is under pressure. It's already been under pressure in terms of its valuation and its share price, and it will be under further pressure now from Elliott Management from the inside to really make some big changes that we know the boss there has promised will come in.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting, actually, this kind of activist kind of share buying, if you like. Let's talk about another household brand. Well, it owns lots of household brands, you should say. Unilever, particularly its ice cream business. You think of kind of Wall's ice cream, don't you? And it's decided to list in Amsterdam and not London.
Yeah, it's decided that its primary listing will be in Amsterdam, where, of course, Unilever's primary listing at the moment is in London. And that will be a blow for London markets and for the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, who we understand has had conversations with Unilever about this very move. Now, the fact that it will have a secondary listing in both the UK and the US is in part down to another activist investor, Elliot Peltz, who has been trying to get the listing in the United States. But yes, there was a lot of pressure on Unilever to make some significant changes to that business because it really has been not performing as many people would like to have seen. Many investors have been incredibly disappointed, and the boss there is making big changes, making sure that it is just focusing in on a few really key products. And at the moment, it thinks that the business is too big, which is why this ice cream business is being hived off.
And Danny, just very finally, I read a piece in The Spectator today. It's called Smoking is Sexy Again. And it talked about young people potentially starting to start smoking again. But clearly, overall, the number of people smoking in this country and globally, or most of the world at least, is in decline. And that's having an impact, isn't it, on people like British American Tobacco?
It absolutely is. I mean, British American Tobacco has set itself a target of becoming smokeless in just under 10 years' time. And of course, it makes the lion's share of its profits, 90% at the moment, from tobacco. So the fact that it's sort of new dawn, if you will, these smokeless products, these vapes, are not going down so well in the United States at the moment is a blow. And it has demonstrated that today with its share price tumbling.
Danny, great stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Danny Houston there from AJ Bell. Thank you. OK, you're watching Business Live. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, interesting story this, why an increasing number of parents are choosing to leave more to one child than another. We'll be explaining what you can do about it after the break. Stay tuned.
Prime Minister Modi is the most popular politician in the country. He is expected to win his third term in these elections.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party, a promise fulfilled. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
He paid over 50,000 to traffickers to get him to America. Instead, he was kidnapped, tied up, and threatened by smugglers. A commando from the state force walks me through to a Maitai village on the front line.
Firing to civilians and they're burning our house.
We cross to the opposite side, held by the cookies.
When they fire, we have to retaliate.
Sky News, get the full story first. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
The enthusiasm is palpable. The young desire change.
These elections are a pivotal moment for the country's economic and political history. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate.
In a prayer, she's asking God to help understand what happened. I cannot carry on. God, help me. He says his world has crashed. Like him, there are scores of families searching for their loved ones.
Too often have families endured such tragedies for the negligence not only by the administration, but also by spiritual people in this country. Free, wherever you get your news. Even though it has few seats in Parliament, Kashmir is symbolic and very significant. It's often been called a nuclear flashpoint.
I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep
for weeks. I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Welcome back. Now, to what probably is one of the most contentious issues, let's be honest about this, within a family, how inheritance is shared out. New research has found an increasing number of parents are leaving more in the will to one child rather than sharing it out equally. Why is it? Let's speak to Scott Taylor, Head of Private Wealth Disputes at Moore Barlow, the law firm behind the research. Scott, what is going on?
Well, our research has found that actually nearly half of Britons find it quite fair to distribute their estate unequally between their children. And this is for a number of different reasons. It might be because actually you've fallen out with one of your children, or actually you've helped them during your lifetime. That could go to school fees or just loans for buying a house or something like that.
Did you say almost half of all Britons? Maybe they're clearly the ones that are winning, aren't they?
Well, our research has found about 48% find that they wouldn't have an issue with it.
So you say that actually lots of people are happy with this. I'm sure there are also a lot of people who are not very happy, particularly if you're the individual involved. What could you then do?
Well, there's not a lot you can do if the will is just quite simply unfair. You've got what we call testamentary freedom in England, and that means you can leave your estate to whoever you want. There are claims that can be brought, but not because you're disgruntled. If you're going to bring a claim, it's because you've got a real financial need and you believe that you can persuade a court that actually mum or dad should have provided for you.
And this, has it increased in recent years? And do we know why that is? Because, I mean, family disputes have, been around since time immemorial. So why the change?
We've certainly seen an increase. Perhaps society is becoming slightly more litigious. House prices increasing. It's a one-off opportunity for a lot of people to get what, in many cases, can be a tax-free sum of money. And I think, the media's got its part to play in all of it as well.
And what's fascinating about this, Scott, is that we're kind of really seeing this a little bit play out with Rupert Murdoch, for example, with his court case in America. Now, he's still very much alive. But I suppose it is also a reminder that if you do want to leave a certain amount more to one kid than another, you do kind of need to make a will in the first place.
Yeah, no, you do. You absolutely do need a will, but also have that conversation. The way to avoid a dispute is to avoid any surprises. I don't know about Rupert Murdoch, but certainly where we sit with our clients, we'll advise them to sit down, have a conversation, and let your children know where they stand.
OK, fascinating, Scott. Thank you very much indeed. If you want more on this, by the way, you can find it on the Sky News Money blog. Thank you, Scott Taylor. There.
Thank you.
OK, that is it for me on Business Live for this afternoon. We're back, of course, at 11:30 tomorrow morning. Coming up next, it's the News Hour with Mark Austin, including live coverage of that attack in Munich. That is the Mini that was involved In it, we know that at least 28 people were hurt after that car was used to ram into a group of people. The driver was a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker who sped up into the crowds. It has caused a lot of political unrest in Germany. The very latest on that, and indeed the rest of the day's news, coming up on Sky News at 5 with Mark Austin. Stay tuned.